Hello and welcome to the Blood and Pigment podcast. My name is Garrett Swader, and I am here with Joseph,
Hello there.
Riley,
Hello.
and Dylan Dyer, aka Dr. D.
How's it going, everybody?
Did you
Okay.
prepare a really, really bad joke to greet him with, Garrett?
I have a great one if you need one.
Go for it. I didn't even hear what we were talking about.
Well, every single episode of mine starts with a dad joke, so I have one. Hey, Joe, do you know what's red and really bad for your teeth? A brick.
That's correct.
And in this episode, we're going to be talking about campaign games in Blood and Plunder. So linked scenarios that carry over one game to the next. Sort of our experiences with that, and what challenges that we've had, and what has worked for us. We've also all been gearing up for Summer of Plunder. I know I have been working a little bit on that, probably way less than I actually should be, because I'm the Spanish commander this year again. Dylan, are you any kind of leadership this year, or are you just a grunt?
So it's interesting you say that. No, I am not technically in any leadership type position. I did recently order a kingly regalia outfit, and I might be the cousin of King Louis the 14th. I might be King Louis, and I might be a trash talker on videos as I said.
The mouth of Sauron, per se.
Yeah, kinda. Yeah.
Okay.
It's gonna be a bit. So kind of, I guess. I'm the propaganda master.
That's almost like you're like a relative of the guy that we're all fighting for on our side.
Correct. That's part of the bit.
Philip V.
Yep.
So cool. Well, and while I'm talking to you, we were going to have you kind of go through your nerd origin story. So if you want to do that for us, I think it's something that you do on your podcast. Is that correct?
Yeah. One of the primary goals of Arachne, I realized very early on that I'm not good at actually winning, and I think that when you go into different realms of this hobby, because I always think of this hobby as like the three, and this is going to kind of directly lead into what we're talking about today, but I think that the miniatures gaming hobby is a very sturdy three-legged stool where each of the legs, which again we'll get into, but I like to really focus on the parts of that hobby triangle that I know I'm good at, which is more of the hobby. And I've been very gifted with the gift of gab, I've noticed over the course of my life, where it's, I think, very interesting to kind of shine light into the areas of the hobby that a lot of people kind of take for granted, So like even interviewing the Firelock staff, like Lily is a great example, where you have somebody who's designing all the books that you're just like, yeah, I opened this book, it cost me this amount of money. I don't know what it took to make it because I just buy it. I may not even read the, quote unquote lore. In this case, it's actually history, but you don't even read it or whatever. You just go straight to the unit page and you're like, oh yeah, I can't believe Freebooter still costs 6 points. Thanks, Joe. And so when you have a situation like that, right, I think it's important for the people that really want this hobby to succeed. Even not even just like Firelock. Obviously, we really focus on them. But I think it's really important that's my goal with Arachne is to kind of delve into that of like who is the people behind, like under the hood, like who are the people that are in this hobby. They're actually interesting, because if I were just going to talk about the fact that it's ridiculous that freebooters are still 6 points, thanks Joe, it doesn't like resonate as much because I don't know what I'm doing half the time, and I'm merely okay at this game. But anyway,
yeah. Say that anymore because you won a tournament. Okay.
I did. I'm okay. I guess I'm okay at this game. That's true. But the nerd origin story. So I started off pretty young, playing video games and all that. I, started with a NES kind of thing to kind of put it into perspective. I just turned 34 like last week. And when growing up, I played a lot of Legos. I really like the building part of it. Never was like something that was like hugely interesting to me. Like I actually liked building, Legos are simple, because they have a little instruction book and all that, and it's big pieces. But one of my favorite things to do with Legos, funnily enough, mostly Star Wars, was I liked to tell my own little stories of like, hey, here's this Jedi that wasn't in any of the movies, and he went on some adventure to go beat some Sith guy that no one's ever heard of, whatever, like that kind of stuff. And so I noticed that when I discovered what model gaming was, a friend of mine introduced me to Dawn of War, which is the very popular, like, I almost said World War II, 40K video game on the computer, like way back when. And I didn't even know it was a model game. I didn't know there were books or anything. And so eventually he brings me to the very first game store I ever went to, which was Sci-Fi City in Orlando, Florida. Just recently closed, which is a shame. They are not around anymore. But I was somewhat of a regular there, and I realized that the little models that you could get there, not only did you have to, there was like a game associated, but there's also you had to paint it and play with it. And I've always been kind of like an artsy fartsy kind of person. So I bought, or my dad bought at the time, a box of Imperial Guard, and I painted them with a toothpick with a shared pot of Regal Blue. I'll always remember that.
Wow.
Yeah, that's how I got started. And now when you look at the miniatures I paint today, I always try and think back on that, where I'm like, yeah, talk about humble beginnings, right? Like I didn't even start with a brush. And nowadays you have people like Riley who are like, paint all my stuff, Dylan, please. And so it all comes full circle, And when you look at it from that kind of perspective, like you see the next, like the trajectory of what it is that I do, and at that point it's just like me getting more and more invested in trying to help the community thrives and blah blah. I'm really young, but I play like every miniatures game you could possibly think of. I mostly focus on historicals because even though I was only like 18, I was an old man at heart with glass eyes, I guess. So that historical part of it was always really interesting, and I got involved with playtesting groups. So like I helped with playtesting, like just recently I helped with Warcrow from CB, which is a great game. Anybody that's interested in that. It's not necessarily my kind of game, but you don't really learn these things until you expose yourself to like new concepts and ideas and blah blah blah. And I helped with some of the playtesting for Flames of War. It wasn't the World War III one. It was the Arab War one. It was the 100 Days War, where it was like Israel versus the Arab countries. I think I helped like do some playtesting for that and all that stuff. But you do all that, and I could bore everybody with the details of all the different games I played and blah, blah, blah. But ironically enough, I went to a Crucible roughly about 10 years ago, and I was playing Dark Eldar at the Crucible narrative event there. And I saw a booth there because Crucible is one of the bigger events going on in Florida. And there was a booth there called Firelock, and there was a game there called Blood and Plunder. And I saw it, and as a historical player, I thought to myself, oh yeah, that'd be a really cool game to play. There's no way that game's going to survive. There's no chance in all goodness sake that game is going to make it. Who's going to play a pirate game? I would, but nobody I know would. And I just kind of wrote it off. I was like, yeah, whatever. That's it's not going to make it. Years go by, blah blah blah. I'm going around. I eventually go to Adepticon. Must have been like I don't know, like 4 years ago. I go there and I see the Firelock booth, and I'm like, oh, this is incredible. I think the 2-player box had just come out. Like the booth was full of them, and I saw that and I was like, oh, look, that game's still alive. That's so cool.
Good for them.
Good for them. And Port Royal hadn't come out yet, and so I saw it and I was like, oh, I would totally play this game. It looks really cool. Look at all these cool. I would love to play the French or the English or whatever. And I thought to myself, wow, this would be really great to play. Nobody's going to play this with me still. Nobody cares. And I went home, no problems. And so Kara is the girlfriend. She's usually around in the background of all the stuff I make. She saw one of our mutual friends. His name is Jeff. He does Defective Dice, which is another great YouTube channel. High recommendation if you're curious about the stuff that goes on in the background of certain games. He talked to Mike about Port Royal, and she saw it, and she's like, oh, look, a pirate game. We should play that. And I looked at her, and I straight up said, I don't know who you are. I don't know what you're trying to get from me. Don't lie to me. Do not tell me you want to play a historical pirate game. I don't know who you are. Please leave my house. My wallet's on the counter. Don't hurt me. Don't hurt me or my dogs. Just take it and leave, please. So come to find out, she's being serious because she has some like history of her family in the pirate world or whatever. And so I buy the Port Royal box, and then I buy some stuff like that. And so there was like a really huge delay in me getting the box. And so I just went on eBay and I just started buying like little bits and pieces of Firelock stuff. And the floodgate broke when I went to that next Adepticon. And I just bought so much stuff, and I knew I was into it. And so right at that point, I was doing a lot of stuff for Infinity, and I've almost completely dropped like every other game I've played just purely for this game because of how much I love it. And, I invited Mike on and we talked, and boom, it's just been off to the races since then. And I will truly say, as someone who has played almost every model game you can think of, if you are playing Blood and Plunder, it's easily one of the best games ever made, ignoring the fact that it's also historical, which just adds more flavor to me. Blood and Plunder is, and I'm sorry I got to use this language on a podcast like this, it's the bee's knees. I'm sorry I had to use that language. It's great.
Joe, you can uncover your ears now.
Oh, thank you. I have
Okay.
too much.
But I will say that as far as nerd origin stories go, I could go into a lot more detail on that. But otherwise, I'd sit here and talk about like all the different games I've played for years. But I've played a lot of them, and this community easily, absolutely takes the cake. Is one of my favorite ones. In every community, there have the people that are great. The Infinity community was very lovely, and they're very understanding of the fact that I'm just like vacant now, and I'm pretty much only making Firelock content now. That and Cyberpunk. Yeah, you're very well. Yeah, and I absolutely couldn't imagine being anywhere else. And so I really appreciate coming on here. I really have I've devoured Blood and Pigment content, and it's an honor to be able to make stuff helping you make for whoever the future Dr. D might be who finds this stuff and is like, wow, I really love this kind of game.
I love hearing that because I haven't played very many miniatures games, and I kind of this has been my miniature gaming world. So it's fun to hear somebody who's played a lot. Appreciate it, and that's cool.
Yeah, we are happy to have you here. I think you've been a great addition to the community. That's already a great community.
Yeah, and even just going into the Firelock thing, the Firelock Discord. I mean, there's a couple names in there. I just see it, and I'm like, I know that if we saw each other in person, we would just like pick up like old friends, you know. And it's absolutely great. That absolutely have made some great friends. That even if I were to stop playing this game, which I don't have any intention or even any inkling of a iota of decimal level point of even thinking of doing that, I would still stay in touch with some of the people that I have made friends with for this community.
Maybe we'll see if we can break some friendships over Summer Plunder here this year.
I'm hoping so. Hopefully I'll break Riley so he stops asking me to paint all his models.
Oh, man.
I don't think it'd be that hard. Riley seems kind of weak to me, but anyway, moving on. So we usually go into a hobby desk section now. Joseph, what are you working on currently right now? Because you're painting while you're doing a podcast.
I'm trying to paint because I haven't painted for months and I feel sad, so I'm painting.
You were the obvious one to go to because you are actually working on something currently right now. So
yeah, I'm painting Chief Greylock from the Summer Plunder miniature organized play kit miniatures.
Fantastic.
He's holding up a scalp. He has a funny hat. And he has lots of doodads that I have to choose colors for. How many kinds of brown can I use here?
When I'm painting natives, I have to like tone it down a bit, or otherwise it's going to take me forever to finish one, because they have, like you said, like a ton of different stuff. And it's like, okay, well, this would most likely be brown, and I don't want it to be the same brown that I've used the other 5 times on this model. So let me mix browns or go out and buy another brown or something. Just
I got 5 browns going so far.
Yeah.
It's funny that you bring that up because people ask me like, oh yeah, how do you get your historicals to look so different than the rest of your stuff? I'm like, literally just paint the entire thing brown. Like if you're looking at historical stuff, it's always just brown.
Yeah.
And then just
earthy
highlight
colors.
Yes. Browns and greens.
Muted colors.
No, you don't want all muted colors, but it depends on what you're painting. But there's a lot of natural fibers and stuff on this guy, so most of them are going to be brown. But
yeah, with historicals, I notice you highlight more with like a bone color as opposed to like a brighter version of the color because it's just like the sun desaturated this guy's pants.
Other than that, I haven't got much hobbying in, really. I've been really tied up prepping for Summer Plunder and finishing up the painting contest. I've seen a lot of great hobbying, enjoyed processing and posting and making albums of all the paint work that the community has done and sent into the Great Pirate Paint-Off this year. We had 562 entrants, which is a record-breaking number, and they were better than usual. Or better, I shouldn't say better than usual, but better than ever before. It's a continuing upward trend of quality, which I love to see.
And you didn't even get anything for me this year.
Thank you for helping judge. I think it was mostly a better quality because Dr. D had submitted stuff. That was a big plus.
He did wind up on a lot of my lists.
Yeah, I think there was only one category I didn't enter in because I didn't fully understand it, which was the Port Royal one, and there was only one of them I didn't at least become a finalist in. The Carpenter and the character one's the only one that didn't actually hit finalist, which I'm super happy with. I will say, it's rare for me to see something painted and just be like literally gobsmacked. That oak and iron Spanish fleet with like the lights coming like up. That was the first time I'd ever seen anything. I was just like, holy. Again, sorry for the language. Holy Toledo. That was one of the most impressive things I've ever seen in my life.
That was a lot of object source lighting, wasn't it? That was crazy.
Yeah.
Impressive.
That's the one that I picked as the Spanish commander as being the best Spanish painted. Normally with that kind of stuff, I think sometimes you can overdo it, but I don't know. That just looked really good to me. Just like it was the perfect amount of it.
Yeah, absolutely applaud that, man. I don't hire people to paint for me. I would 100% reach out to me. I will 100% pay you money to paint an Oak and Iron fleet for me. That is beyond rare for me. That is unheard of, you could say.
Yeah.
Yeah, I felt really bad. I shouldn't confess on air here, but I made a mistake and didn't have his entry in the Oak and Iron. Somehow the picture didn't upload. I felt really bad because his entry wasn't even in there to get judged. And you can't really undo something like that when votes have been cast. So I sent him a little apology gift. But I was really glad to see that he won 2 prizes here at the end of the contest. So my apologies
Well
on there,
deserved.
and I'm glad. Yeah,
Yeah.
for sure.
Very well deserved.
But when you're dealing with 2,000 pictures, it's easy to miss 1 or 2. I don't know.
I've been working on terrain. I'm hosting a tournament at my game store on the 30th of May, and I usually provide 95% of the terrain for Blood and Plunder stuff. So I've been trying to add some stuff just in case I get, 6 or 8 people and I have to put out 4 tables. So yeah, that's been going pretty good. I've got a lot of PVA glue in a spray bottle, and I've just been spraying and flocking stuff. So that's entertainment. And I'm also been researching some because we're in addition to the tournament, I usually do a kind of a kickoff party type thing where I have snacks and stuff, and I wanted to kick it up a notch for the historical angle for snacks this time. I don't know if people are going to like it as much because it's probably worse snacks, but it's going to be more accurate snacks. I'm going to have some ship's biscuits and some the best I can do it Bucan there for people to enjoy. And I just got back from Drake's raid, which I'll talk a little bit more in depth later on. But I'm getting the inkling to do maybe some leather working for a few things to up my kit game for my reenacting stuff. So I've ordered some things, maybe have some leather on the way, do a few smaller projects, but that's going to be a new hobby for me coming up. Dylan, what are you working on currently?
So this is gonna be a funny answer, and you can tell me to stop if you don't want me to do it. But I actually track every model I paint every year. I have a Excel spreadsheet. So I've never been on here. So I could tell you literally every Blood and Plunder or Firelock painted model I've had since January 1st of 2026. If you would like me to,
It can just be in like the last couple of weeks.
last couple weeks.
Yeah.
So obviously finished up all the stuff for the French force. So a lot of I finished up that blue. I call it the new resin sloop. I guess it's not new, but the resin sloop that I painted, and it's so named HMS the Sacre Bleu because it's a very blue boat. I thought that was clever.
It is very clever. It is very clever.
Thank you. Because Sacre Bleu is French, also.
Yes.
Okay.
So I've heard.
And other than that, I've painted a bunch of the new Summer Plunder models. I've painted 2 of the Woods Rogers, 2 of the Benjamin Golds. I'm working on 3 of these Peter Stools, which, man, they've absolutely been. For some reason, this is the one where I'm having trouble just like finally finishing the silly little things. And then I'm trying to finish up some Milicianos for the second part of the Get the Girl YouTube battle report thing, where if anybody hasn't seen it, we did a battle report on YouTube where a Spanish governor's daughter is trying to escape, and the next game is going to be a Port Royal, try and rescue her from the Spanish side. So I wanted to make sure I had enough Spanish models that were fully painted. I think it's getting to the point where I might have to start playing unpainted stuff on the channel because it's getting tough getting everything painted. But for the most part, that's it. I've only painted 144 models since the beginning of the year.
Oh my goodness.
That blew me out of the water.
You got to give up on receiving the love of others. That's what I've learned.
Yeah. Maybe a few other things too.
No sleep.
Yeah,
no sleep.
I've tried that. I haven't seen your Woods Rogers yet. I don't think. Have I?
No, I haven't sent it. Yeah, okay. So I guess I don't know if you want to announce it now or whatever, but I'm painting multiple of the Summer Plunder models because my intention is that maybe we can give them away during the Summer Plunder as some kind of drawing. I wanted to finish a couple of them and then take like a bunch of pictures of it all together and send it all to you. I haven't sent you any of the new Summer Plunder stuff, but I was after Peter Stool. I will 100% will send you like a bunch of pictures of them like interacting or just a bunch of stuff.
I've been trying to catch your painting streams, which are always fun, but I haven't dropped in where Woods Rogers has been on the desk. Yes.
I painted him based on his look in Assassin's Creed because he's one of the, spoiler alert for like a 15-year game. He's one of the villains in Black Flag, which is not surprising since he's like the bane of pirates. Also, his pose based on a statue I found.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Which that was cool. It's a cool pose. Dan and M are like insane when it comes to model design. They're absolutely blowing it out of the water. So yeah, the new Summer Plunder models are insane in the membrane. Again, sorry for the lane.
Well, people like him.
Oh, they'll love them. Of that, I have no doubt. The Hornigold is the most perfect pose that I can imagine for Hornigold. It's so good.
It's funny because that pose is basically based on the Kit Bash pose that Jason Klotz made of him out of the plastic kits, which is based kind of on a variety of representations of him in cultural video games and movies and shows and stuff. It's kind of weird because he's like the grandfather, but he only lived like of piracy, of the 18th century piracy, but he's only lived to like 40.
And they don't even know how he passed away, right? Because he was hunting down Vane and then he kind of like just disappeared.
Something like that, yeah.
Lots of things can happen to you in the ocean.
Yeah. I mean, thankfully, Black Bart made it. And he got back to his lady. Oh, wait. Oh, that's a shame. Anyway, that's what I did.
What about you, Riley?
I am working on all sorts of stuff. Right now, I've got a commander I'm painting up for Summer of Plunder to give away. I'm doing the English command stuff this year, so I want to have a nice little mini to give away. And then I'm working on a separate little surprise project right now. And then I've got some stuff for Quar going for a different game. But yeah, that's about it. Oh, I've got some cool old Star Trek minis, little pewter spaceships. Those are pretty fun to paint. I'm doing a lot of edge highlighting with those, like the Aztec panel lining. So it's a lot of fun.
Yeah.
But that's about all I got going.
You didn't even mention our terrain building days.
Oh, yeah, that's a whole thing too. How many stands did we do? Probably like 50 little stands of palm trees and evergreen trees. That was a lot of fun. We probably have 4 tables worth of terrain, I think, now. Just all scatter bits.
We're talking about Brian, my buddy, being enthused after coming back. And he got everybody organized and scheduled a whole day or Saturday afternoon for us all to get together and just try to pump out a bunch of terrain so we have some kind of club terrain at the store so you wouldn't have to bring it back and forth and figure out who's bringing terrain every time. So it's not all done yet, but that was fun.
We're getting there. I think it just needs sealed up, and then I think we're pretty much done there.
There's still a bunch of stuff down there that's not done, but
yeah. Which, Garrett, you said something about sealing a bunch of flocking to stuff. How do you do your sealant for terrain projects?
I just water down PVA and just spray the shit out of it.
Okay. So you soak the PVA into the flocking.
Yeah, so just water it down and then just spray mist it over there. And I usually do like 2 or 3 coats. I let it completely dry. And then I'll spray it again, and then I leave like completely dry again, and then I'll spray it again, and it usually just is concrete after a while.
Nice.
You can even to like let it soak in a little bit better. You can give it a misting of isopropyl alcohol first, and then hit it with the PVA, and it'll like soak into it a little bit better that way.
Gotcha.
Had a bit of a debate between club members about how to finish these off.
Yeah. And then you can also just go matte varnish over top of that. I usually do that as well.
Yeah.
Just again, because terrain gets handled a lot, and it's gonna break down eventually, and you're fighting a losing battle, but you're just holding out as long as you can.
Okay, so you think combining both of those is a good idea then?
Yeah, it's not gonna hurt anything.
Yeah. All right.
Just let it, let it get completely dry before you go on top of it with the spray paint, or varnish.
Nice.
Should be fine.
Okay.
In my experience, your results may vary. What commander are you painting for Summer of Plunder?
He's one of the old metal ones from Summer of Plunder. Joseph, do you remember? Do you remember that one mini I showed you? No, I forget what he's called.
Also come up later in this episode if we're talking about campaign and link scenarios and stuff, but he's from the, I think, 2020 organized play kit, which was the Buccaneers Companion campaign, the South Sea Adventure.
Was he the guy holding the musket and pointing?
Yeah, is it
Sword.
Howard
I think
Pyle? Is that his name? Howard Pyle?
He's got a
I,
sword, and then he's pointing with his right hand.
Well, okay. Yeah. He's like he's supposed to be like the Spanish commander in that,
Right,
isn't he?
right.
nobody knows. Nobody knows really what they're supposed to be. There was no
Oh,
instructions as far as who was what. So
I use
there
him
was
sometimes as a Spanish commander, so he
sure.
looks vaguely Spanish to me, Spanish enough.
Gotcha. I knew that he was old. He's old. I have duplicates of him, so I thought, this will be kind of cool to give away. Something somebody probably hasn't seen before if they're new.
Yeah, that's rare.
Probably somebody doesn't have one painted at least.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm working on Zuniga to give away. That's going to be my giveaway mini this year. So he's currently being painted. But segue into that Castillo de San Marcos campaign game, Joseph, reports of glory and shame.
Yeah, Riley and me are going up to Enfilad, which is our Northwest Historical Gamers Society mini, or not mini. It's the biggest one west of the Mississippi, they say, which isn't saying much for historical game conventions. We're running this scenario there. It's basically a what if James Moore actually attacked Castillo San Marcos in his 1702 raid at the kind of beginning of the Queen Anne's War. They English like, let's just go take out St. Augustine. So they took a bunch of by sea and land, came down and attacked St. Augustine. They took the city. The Spanish all retreated to their fort, Castillo San Marcos, which was the biggest stone fort on the mainland, I think, at that point.
I wouldn't be surprised if it was in the modern day U.S. at least.
Yeah. So in reality, the English kind of like, oh yeah, there's a fort. We forgot our mortars and our cannons don't do anything against this Coquina fort. So they just held the city for a while and then went home. But this is going to
Well,
be the what if.
they did try to go get cannons, but
But they never.
the Spanish reinforcements wound up coming before their cannons from Jamaica got there. So
Right. So, but this one, it's basically, I want to use my fort. I have this big, nice stone fort, and we're going to put it on the table and have English attack it. And balancing is always tricky because attacking a fort over open ground, trying to climb up a wall, is obviously a disadvantaged position. So we balanced it with about 30% extra for the English, and that wasn't enough. They still got trounced. So, story of shame for me because I tried to balance it so everybody have fun, and the attacker still got mauled, which is kind of a common story with my first drafts of these kinds of things. How did it go for you?
Yeah, so I was playing the English and I got mauled. No, it was fun. I'm drawing a blank on who else I had on my team with me, but
Travis and Brian, I think.
was it yes, I know Brian. Yep, okay. Yeah, so Travis and Brian and I, yeah, it didn't go so well. I think we had a pretty good plan, but I don't know, the defenders shuffled some stuff around and that kind of added a little extra heat. But yeah, it was a fun game. It was a fun test run.
We put it on a two 6x4s together, so a 6x8,
Yep.
and then we had
Mhm.
3v3, 150 point English forces attacking 120 point forces in the fort. Yeah, the cannons kind of mess people up. We're trying to figure out a way to make the cannons worse and blow up in their Spanish faces like they really did. So that'll make it more interesting.
you should give the English mortars.
There isn't any rules for mortars, which we have to make up.
You write rules for Blood and Plunder, right?
We have rules written up for it, but at this convention, it's mostly people who have never played before, so I don't know how deep I want to go into that territory.
You could reduce the Spanish even more and just say, you know, they've been hit with mortars a lot.
I think I'm going to reduce them more and then like have it so if the Spanish are reduced to like one unit, another unit comes out of the fort up to the walls to reinforce or something. So it's not just has to be balanced.
I actually have an idea on this because in Port Royal, I thought it was super clever. When you play the Spanish, if you roll to shoot and you get any ones, the other person can actually spend a fortune to make them like have to reload because the powder sucks. So you could maybe give like a ton of fortune points to the English and maybe let them use it to like mess with the cannons. Maybe have them like spike them or something like that on certain rolls.
Yeah, blow up a cannon or something on a one.
Like if they roll one, you can spend it. Like maybe they get 10 fortune, they can either use it for rerolls or they can use it to like spike a cannon.
That's something we workshop together after the game. Is every one they roll is an extra reload.
Yeah, there you go.
So on grape shot, that can be pretty harsh, especially on a heavy cannon. 5 dice, you can get a couple. Then also, it's kind of a weird situation with the faction. The faction that technically covers this era is the Reformed Spanish militia, and they don't have that inexperienced artillery crew, only the artillerymen, which is actually a pretty good unit. So
Yeah, just give them inexperienced guys.
I just have to hack the force builder and then print the system and then fix it so it says the right thing. I have to consider that too.
Just do pen and paper.
Yeah. Anyway, it was a big game. It was fun. Got 6 people on the board, but it was a blowout for the English. They lost pretty badly. So.
Which I think it would have been if they historically tried to storm that fort in the state that it was in.
So I did it perfect.
Yeah, exactly. I think their plan was to just try to siege it and get a surrender from the Spanish. And mortars would have helped that a lot because you could have started lobbing shells into the fort and not worried about walls. So,
right. But yeah, I was gone 1 week on our Thursday night, and then nobody showed up last week. Riley texted me like 2 minutes before it's time to game, and like, I'm going to go home and 3D print instead. So then I was there sad by myself, and it was pretty depressing.
That's a villain. What a villain.
Yeah. Must be related to Woods Rogers.
I saw the picture you took in the game store by yourself, and I was heartbroken.
It looked pretty sad.
I was still there because my son was playing Legion, and he was all geared up to go and had an opponent and everything, so I took it.
Oh, that's a good bonus. Actually, ironically enough, man, the Twitch has been pushing me to play Legion so much right now. Oh my goodness.
Legion's doing really well. It's quite good.
Yeah.
It's expensive, but it's good.
Well, it's definitely expensive compared to Firelock, but the sad part is like Legion's still one of the cheaper ones compared to some others in the room, shall we say.
Well, Firelock feels expensive to me, but yeah, you've been around more than I have. But yeah, Legion. I guess they just came out with their probe droid expansion. Has 2 probe droids. Guess how much it costs?
$50.
I was gonna say probably. I'm gonna guess like 40.
60.
I think it's only 30, but it still seems like a lot.
So 60 for 2 probe droids. That's pretty brutal.
But most of the units are $60, and then if you want 2 of them, you gotta fork out $100 just to get 1 unit of stupid teddy bears. What are they called? Ewoks.
Oh, the Ewoks. I mean, the one thing I'll say whenever I buy these models is I always like to just look at the cost per dude, you know. And I think most of the Legion boxes come with like 7 to 10 or something like that. So you figure if they're like $60, I mean, you're paying like $8-9 a guy. That's one of the big advantages of Firelock stuff, right? Is like it's usually if you're buying the resins, it's like $5 to $4 a guy, roughly speaking. And then the starter boxes are obviously better. I think with the starter boxes, you almost get like 1, maybe 2 free blisters.
Not quite that good. 99 for 25s. That's $4. So you're getting $16 of blisters instead of 18. But
okay, just 1.
It's good.
I'm not. My name's not Dr. Math. It's Dr. D. It's not Dr. Math. The D's for dumb. Anyway.
Well, I went to St. Augustine this past weekend, I think. Yeah. Time flies. But yeah, I went to St. Augustine to participate in Drake's raid. That was a lot of fun. Got to tailor my kit a little bit towards the 16th century and hang out with Sir Francis Drake. A lot more people came to this reenactment than Cyril's. We're working on that. I know people in the group have said, you know, pre-COVID, we had like reenactments where we had 100 plus reenactors at some of these places. And I really want to get back to that. That would be awesome. I usually do English for my reenacting, even though that I'm a Spanish player through and through in Blood and Plunder. English is just way easier to research, and that's the group that I joined, so that's just what I do. And we had a lot of Spanish reenactors at this event, and we decided to do more of a tactical battle this time instead of our usual script. Which was a lot of fun. I like that style of reenacting a lot better. We get to kind of script it out a little bit differently each time, and maybe one side wins, and not repeat history. So that's kind of fun. So yeah, Drake lost this time. I think it was the first time in 440 years. So that was pretty substantial. But yeah, we gave up. We gave the Spanish the field. The Spanish commander just had too, like his armor was just too good for us to do anything against. Like, that guy had some fantastic immaculate armor. So
Can I put those pictures together, or you want to write a blog post? I saw them come through today, and I think people would really enjoy seeing them.
yeah, I can write something up. It was a lot of fun. We got to do some interesting formations, even though there wasn't that many of us. I got to swing my musket around like a club a couple of times, so that was fun. I did not have any of my previous issues of firing my musket. If you remember my talking about the first time I did muskets at one of these things, I had a hell of a time trying to get the thing to go off. This time, every time I pulled the trigger, at least on the first couple trigger pulls, it would shoot. So that was good. Yeah, and every reenactment I go to down there, it's always a blast, and I hope I can continue to do it year in and year out until I no longer physically can.
You're earning your fast reload and marksman traits or special
Yeah.
rules.
Can't wait to get the Buccaneer gun down for Cyril's next time. That's going to be
Yeah.
sweet. That was one of my projects that I'm going to do leatherworking. So I'm going to do a hammer stall for that. Basically a little leather sleeve to put over the frizzen to keep it nice, and to keep the if you accidentally, it almost works as a second safety too. If you accidentally like hit the trigger and the cock is pulled all the way back, it'll hit the leather and not cause sparks. That's all I got. Unless somebody has questions.
Did big gun go boom?
Yes. We have a field swivel gun that we roll up and fire.
They were shooting off of the bastions of the fort too. Look like that. Look cool. Didn't you send a video through of somebody doing a demonstration?
Oh no, that was, yeah, they so the Castillo there, they were doing a program for the 250th. That was English guys, or reenactors doing English drill for their cannon. Usually they have reenactors doing Spanish drill, so that was something different. And St. Augustine during the time was a very, like a lot of loyalists that wanted to flee the rebellion came to Florida, because East and West Florida at that time were English colonies, and they stayed loyal to the crown at the time. So,
What time period is that?
American Revolution.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
Did we ask Dylan what his stories of glory and shame yet?
Not yet.
What you got?
So, this is a good segue to what we're about to talk about. I just recently started a local, very big narrative type campaign where I'm gonna invent rules kind of as we go. I'm kind of just doing different things to get people more involved in the narrative that it is that we're trying to do. Very recently, I guess, a couple years ago, there was a big Horus Heresy community up here, and I was really into Horus Heresy because it's 40K, the historical, essentially. And they had a big quarterly event that would happen where they all fought over this like sector or like a map. It was all very like kind of loosey goosey. It wasn't like super like specific move things around on a board or anything. But I really just dug that kind of narrative concept, and so I just started a local thing where every quarter we're gonna all get together and we're gonna have I guess like not even like a tournament, but everybody will play games, and the games themselves will dictate what happens in the story. So there's going to be like some major plot points that happen. And the whole selling point of this campaign is, at least for the first event, was I kept track of certain stats, and I'm going to create a city where each of the players is going to colonize essentially this new world that I could reveal more of if you guys are curious, but they are going to essentially make their own settlement that'll have its own stats, and then these stats are actually going to be able to influence the games that they play in the future events of this narrative event. So the shame and all that stuff. The very first event, somebody came with Spanish mission garrison of all things and absolutely crushed everybody. Oh my goodness, he was unstoppable. And I brought English Buccaneers because English Buccaneers will forever be my favorite faction, even though it is not the strongest. I'm just going to put that out there due to the fact that there's a unit there that costs 6 points. Thanks, Joe. And so when I was playing against them, I just got wiped out. Well, I guess I didn't get wiped out. I just couldn't get enough guys off the table. And then the second game, I played against somebody who was pretty relatively. I'm like the guy who does all the demos, right? So after that, I played against a guy who was playing his French. He's pretty brand new. He's played like a couple demo games. It was like his first like real game, and he annihilated me like it was nothing. Like I could not pass a roll to save my life, and he annihilated my sloop. And then I did a demo today actually, and a bunch of pirates got on my boat. He really wanted to play Calico Jack. Him and his lovely ladies introduced themselves to my French. Everybody died, and he bonked me real good. But we were playing without the wind because it was his very first game. So I always let people play the boat game without the wind on the first game, just so they can kind of get their how to move the wooden tub around.
Not a bad idea.
Yeah, anything to kind of just introduce it in tiered steps is how I like to look at it. Otherwise, it just gets too complicated. If they can understand an assignment and kind of that a dedicated action exists at all, then I know the demo was successful.
Right.
And
That's a big one. That's a big one.
Yeah, the dedicated actions is big. And there you go. So
books? Do we want to do books?
For all you Dutch noisy people out there, I'm reading Creolization and Contraband, Curaçao and the Early Modern Atlantic by Linda M. Rupert.
What is it about?
It's about the history of Curaçao, basically, and by extension, the Dutch in the Caribbean. I'm only 76 pages out of 230 in, but it's specifically, at least by accident, I don't know, probably on purpose, looking at Jewish and African populations in Curaçao. At least the first half of it has been heavily focused on that. But by extension, everything else, which it's hard to find dedicated histories on the smaller islands, at least in my experience, in the Caribbean. So anything you can find that's focused on subtopic like this is valuable. So I've been enjoying it so far.
I am almost finished with the Anglo-Spanish War of 1655 to 1660. This is Volume 1, The War in the West Indies. It's by Paul Sutton. It's one of the Century of the Soldier books, number 67. Very dense history. I like it a lot. Goes through a lot of what happened on Hispaniola and why Venables was an idiot a lot of the time during that campaign. So it's pretty good. I'm into the last little bit that it's going into for they're already in Jamaica and they are struggling through the first few months of being in Jamaica and then the Spanish resistance to them on Jamaica. And then I have Volume 2, which goes into the guerrilla war on Jamaica a lot more in depth and just continues on from there. So I'm excited to get back into that. But I may give this a break for my next book and go to The Buccaneer's Realm, which is a book that I feel like I should have read like 5 years ago.
That's a little title, right?
Yeah. I'll probably do that one next, just to get the palate cleanser of like I'll go back to Jamaica in a minute. But yeah, it's been super interesting. Goes kind of in depth on how Venables bungled things a lot of different aspects along the way, and what I just got finished reading was how he just kind of screwed up the whole Spanish negotiations on Jamaica as well. Just allowed the Spanish to flee into the mountains and just made horrible decisions along the way and just allowed this Spanish resistance force to stick around for as long as they wanted
5 years.
Yeah.
That series is really great. Really good research you can't find anywhere else that I've found unless you go to primary sources, and it's one of those two books you're referencing are two of the big sources that got used for the Rise of Buccaneers project. So if anybody's interested in the hardcore history, that's a great place to read.
Yeah, I would recommend it if you're into the history of that, which I find the Western design stuff super interesting. So I've been eating it up lately.
So I don't know if anybody saw it, but the Western design at the very end of the Kickstarter, it got put out as a stretch goal, which wasn't a stretch goal. Months ago, we were trying to Mike was trying to decide the scale, or the scope of the book, which got switched many times, which made me get all the gray hair that Dr. D put on my miniature. But it was good. Should it include the Western design or not? It's a weird little part of history, and it's very different than the occupation of Jamaica and the buccaneering that comes out of it. But he said, okay, we'll just make it a stretch goal. And then he forgot to make it a stretch goal until the thing was all done. I said, did you ever make it a stretch goal? Like, oh yeah.
Did you ask him because I asked you?
No, I had right before that.
Okay. That was going to be funny because every time a stretch goal came up, I was like, oh, is this going to be the Western design? Oh, it's not. Okay. It'll be the next one. And then it got to the end and I was, and I like messaged Joseph and I was like, man, I guess we didn't hit far enough for them to get to the Western design. I guess maybe we can release that some other time or something. Bummed out. And he was like, oh, Mike just forgot about it. I was like, damn it.
But there'll be a little PDF basically that includes the army faction, which is not good because the English were very poorly mismanaged, and it was a bad group of troops basically with a bad mission with a bad leader.
I think more bad leadership than anything, because they just kept getting ambushed, and that would just wreck their whole momentum.
Yeah.
And it really shouldn't have. Like, they should have just kept pressing on. But Venables would get ambushed, and he would just like, okay, back to the river. We got to regroup.
Typhoid and die, whatever.
Yeah. But yeah, it's gonna be. I want some of those ambush scenarios and stuff from that to be really good, and some of the lists and everything. Looking forward to it. So
I don't think it's gonna be a big expansion. It's just gonna have
no. It's just gonna be like a couple of army lists and some scenarios probably, but that's
couple scenarios.
That's all it needs to be.
And then the leaders, Venables, and then some of the Navy leaders, which are kind of bigger names in the whole big picture of things, but not big in the Caribbean except for this one deal.
Did you have a book, Dylan?
I sure did. I've been slowly making my way through the book Armada by Colin Martin and Jeffrey Parker, which is a very, very in-depth, detailed, but very, very digestible and readable account of everything that happened in the 1588 Spanish Armada that very successfully turned Spain back into a Catholic. Oh no, wait, they didn't. They actually got annihilated by the weather, and the English whooped their behinds from every single day of the week. I'm a big fan of Francis Drake. Actually, ironically enough, that you mentioned him, and that was one of his big claims to fame, is that he did really well in that whole thing. And I've actually been thinking that it's a really good place for eventually Blood and Plunder to go into. I think 1588 is kind of really early, kind of maybe a little too early, because that was probably, because even reading the book, they go into in pretty good detail that this is like the point where the English are like, oh, we need to shoot things with cannons. The cannons are the key here. Let's design our ships to carry cannons, as opposed to just having a million soldiers on it. And there's actually like a breakdown of how much of the crew is like soldiers compared to like what it was in the ships before that, and blah, blah, blah. And it goes over the very strange detail of the English and Spanish monarchies kind of bumbling into each other, because Philip II was actually technically married. He was actually the king of England for a little while, and then the wife dies, and then Elizabeth takes over because of this rebellion, and then Mary is the Queen of Scotland, and she's technically more supposed to be the Queen of England, but a bunch of people were like, well, we can't have a person be in charge of Scotland and England at the same time, and there's all the northern. So it's a very interesting take on the Protestant Catholic issues that were happening in the 1580s. And I think it'd be a really cool book to go into, because it actually adds a bunch of Spanish commanders who are like super competent, because there's like the Duke of Parvo, I think is what it's called. Yeah, Parva. Absolutely, like, or super Parma, well respected. It's Parva, something like that. I could look it up, obviously, but it's off the top of my head. Absolutely phenomenal leader, but he would be like a perfect candidate for like a legendary force in this game, just because of all the stuff he did in the Dutch Rebellion. And obviously you could have like Drake and the other naval commanders be legendary forces and all that stuff. So I've actually kind of been toying around with the idea of doing something similar to what Dan did with the Great Northern War stuff. Maybe Firelock picks it up, maybe they don't, because I know they're a little they like to kind of keep the Caribbean thing a little bit separate. I figure I make it. I maybe introduce some new rule ideas that I've been thinking about, and kind of see where it goes from there. But add it to the list of stuff to do. I got to finish the book first. I'm probably about a quarter of the way through. It's super digestible. Absolutely phenomenal book. Highly recommend it. It's called The Armada by
Nice.
Colin and
that
Joe.
there's a lot of things that happened to the Spanish in that engagement that went bad for them.
Yeah.
Probably the biggest. I look at the biggest reason the Spanish lost that whole thing is they had probably their best commander, best naval
good luck.
commander
Yeah,
died right before.
Right.
And then the king appoints a guy who has no experience and doesn't want to command the armada to command the armada. And so that seems like a fantastic guy to put in charge.
And Philip II was a well-known like armchair general, I guess, because apparently he was very detail orientated, but you could only ever communicate with him with letters. He would never like go somewhere to like talk. So all of the information he gets is like weeks old. So he's just like not on the scene. So all his decisions are kind of not great. He's a very interesting leader. He's like not really a bad king, but he definitely did some things that were not good as far as like management goes.
Yeah,
Elizabeth had her moments.
Pretty standard, I would say.
Yeah, sure. I mean, the Spanish Empire at the time was absolutely friggin' massive. You figure it was pretty much the Americas. Naples, I think so. Spain still had most of Italy, and they had the Netherlands.
The Netherlands were being contested.
Yeah. Yes, they were. And that's kind of like the Duke's claim to fame. Yeah, it's super interesting stuff if you're interested in the whole Protestant Catholic thing. Especially.
Yeah, I really want Blood and Plunder to move into the 16th century in the New World, like as well on that sort of thing. So very, very behind that project.
I would say Drake is a great candidate, right? Because he went to the New World. It's not like
yeah. Well, I mean, he
circumnavigated the globe.
St. Augustine. He raided. That was one of the things in the Western design. They were trying to replicate what Drake did, because Drake sacked Santo Domingo in the 1500s, and that was one of the things that they were looking to when they were making the Western design. They were like, okay, how did Drake do it? Let's do it exactly like Drake did it. and the Spanish at the time had put in defenses to defend against exactly what Drake did, and that was kind of what screwed them up.
But then it's interesting to see how Henry Morgan kind of did it what Francis Drake did. He just kind of went about it like in a different way.
Yeah.
A little bit more like rowdy, I guess. It's interesting to see what sticks and doesn't stick. Francis Drake is just a huge hero to me. Him and Henry Morgan are some of my favorite people in history, and I think they're fascinating. I love leaders of men.
There's a big GMT board game, a couple of them actually, that kind of cover between like 1500 and Elizabethan era. Here I Stand is the Wars of the Reformation, and then the Virgin Queen covers this area you were talking about right now. And I play it with a group of historical nerd friends about twice a year. One of these games takes about between 6 and 14 hours. GMT, pretty on the chit and counter kind of side of things, but they're still fairly light as far as the super nerdy war games go. But I was England one time, and if you miss one rule in those kind of games, you can get messed up. And my friend Brian missed this one rule where you only can build one step of the Spanish Armada at a time. So he just took one turn and built the Spanish Armada from nothing into this monstrosity and came out and destroyed my entire English navy. And then we realized we made a mistake like 6 hours later, and I felt bad. But it has Drake. You can go raid the New World, and you can build fortresses out there. The Virgin Queen is quite a good game. You can arrange marriages. Elizabeth can jilt people. You roll on the pregnancy track every time. This is quite fun.
I would immediately play those games. Say that.
That was great. It was great. It's great.
I was going to say that I finished listening to an audiobook of Enemy of All Mankind by Steve Johnson. That was a pretty good book. And then I am starting Villains of All Nations by Marcus Rediker. Both of those are pretty good reads for pirate fans.
Yeah, I've read both of those.
Yeah, I've heard of them.
He gets heavy in the weeds on social history and kind of ideas, and has definitely a point of view. Redeker,
That's
at least.
that's a thing that a lot of people like to do with pirates, 18th
Yeah.
century pirates especially.
Yeah.
It's a valid thing to talk about, but it's not the whole story.
No.
Redeker, if you've read one of his books, you almost read all of his books. They come back to the same thing every single time. But if you haven't read any of them, shit. In my opinion. When this comes out, it'll be starting, but we're running our Summer of Plunder campaign again this year, and it's kind of a loose campaign. It's just a big play more and have fun doing it and get to know the community better and connect people, and it should be fun. We kind of themed it after Queen Anne's War, so all the scenarios, which we've kind of upped our game on that as well. On the miniatures we've been talking about, all kind of tie into the Raise the Black expansion. So if you haven't got the Raise the Black expansion yet, it's a good time to pick it up. Organized Play Kit is available for anybody on the website. You can buy a kit that just has one copy of all the miniatures for, I think it's $30, which is a pretty good deal for six miniatures and a book of scenarios. And they're brand new miniatures they sculpted of commanders out of Raise the Black that didn't have their own sculpts, kind of the second tier that didn't make that box, the Pirates of Legend box, but one from each nation, so there's something for everybody in there. A little bunch of volunteers lined up to help with the whole campaign if you want to get involved with all the people and kind of the competitive aspect, which is kind of a second layer to play your games, have fun, and then if you want, you can kind of interact with this online map and try to dominate. There's only 2 teams versus 6. There's alliances of 3 nations rather than a big free-for-all. Try to steer away from the Kingmaker thing, which has happened a couple of years and previously. But if you go on Blood and Pigment, pretty much everything for the last month has been Summer of Plunder stuff going up. We got tons of prizes. Dan's been working hard on prizes. Couldn't even figure out how to get some of it away, so we had to pare back. We're saving some from later. But a lot of stuff to give away. And if you don't think you'll ever win a prize because there's too many people, which we have about 150 people in the Discord so far, which is good, we made these just stickers, which sounds kind of lame. But if you want a commemorative sticker, 2026 Summer of Plunder sticker with a flag and a commander, and it might even be painted by Dr. D, Young Morgan, and a little quote that kind of is coming from how that nation plays. You can get them for free. I'm shipping a bunch out. I was writing addresses last night. So lots of stuff going on. Summer of Plunder should be fun. Hopefully more people will be out at your gaming store. Let's see if you can get people to come out and play over the summer. Starts May 30th and goes to August 1st, I think. Play games, win prizes, have fun.
It's always a good time.
Yeah, it's something to look forward to every year.
What are the English doing this year to be cool?
To be cool.
Probably something lame.
Yeah, some lame stuff. We got some activation tokens coming this way that have the good old English flag on them with Summer of Plunder 2026 on them. Kind of recycling that idea from last year. I like them because it's just a nice little thing to collect. And then we have the commander that I'm painting up to give away. And then my second, Kyle Hilliker, is doing a mini as well to give away as another secondary prize. And then I think we've got terrain packets to give out as well as the stickers. So all sorts of little stuff. But if you jump in on the English Discord, go through some of the pins, and there will be stuff about the infamy system that we use for giving out prizes.
Yes, you have this infamy system where every time you participate at some level, you get points and you can track and get extra prizes from that. Is that kind of how you're running it?
Yep, that's basically how that goes. Is you have a point for a paint night, a point for submitting a game, a point for doing lieutenant requests. Those are like little community building things. I think we're doing one for objectives, playing the objective for the week.
Mhm.
There's a fourth way to earn a point in there that I'm blanking on. Yeah, I mean, if you participate in half of that, most likely you'll get a prize. So easy peasy.
I think it's usually like because it's like because like last year was the same thing. It was play a game, do the request, paint night, and then I think it was like doing the bonus objective for whatever the week was. I think it was.
Yep.
I think that's what that other one was.
Which this year there's a scenario you can play every week if you want, a historical scenario of different styles, sizes, and flavors, or games. There's a Oak and Iron and Port Royal one as well, but the scenario kind of ties in with the generic objective too, so everything is kind of tied all together.
Should be fun.
We got Daniel Ray on board, who was a pirate leader or pirates. Yeah, I think pirate leader last
Yeah,
year, and
he was.
helped us. We've kind of totally redesigned the map and the campaign system, so it should be interesting. Should be fun.
And I can say from the French, because I'm playing French this year, the two commanders, they have made a 3D printable, their own version of Montbar the Executioner, who was actually designed by, it was either Dan or M, so it's like kind of like pseudo official,
Yeah, looks awesome.
Yeah, it does look really good. So play French, so you can win.
Yeah, you can look at that model on the Call to Arms French post on Blood and Pigment. Everybody, each commander pair, second and first commander wrote a kind of thing, Call to Arms. Why do you want to play for us? And you can see that miniature up there. It looks super cool. Did you get that file? They shared it with us so they could print a couple.
Well, yeah. So I got that file downloaded. I just haven't gotten a chance to mess with it too much, and I got to try and do it soon before it heats up here. I got to get rid of the resin printer for the summer. I got like a little exhaust fan for it, and the AC, having the AC plugged in right where the resin vent is a terrible idea. So I got to try and get that done here soon.
Do you want to poison yourself?
No. I try not to.
Yeah, but the French leadership looks pretty good this year. They're taking things seriously. You're going to have to up your game, Riley, and get serious about strategy.
Strategy. Yep.
Yeah.
I was actually talking to the Sun King before this podcast, and he said that you're a lame-o, Riley. Sorry, I tried to stop him, but he pushed me on the ground.
The who?
The Sun King.
The Sun King.
Never heard of him?
Who's Louis XIV?
Oh, okay. All right.
Wow. Only like one of the biggest monarchs in all of human history. Look at this guy.
Well, I don't have him
Longest
by
reigning.
I don't have him by
Riley,
nickname. I mean,
I don't
I'm,
say this
I'm
to
not
everybody,
even a
but you're a
basis.
silly goose. You know that?
Yeah.
You're a big silly goose.
Language.
Well, I
I'm
mean,
sorry.
English. That's the silly gooses is what they kind of draw over there. They're over there playing the goose game.
Yep.
Which is a
Duck,
silly
duck,
game.
goose.
I've played it at reenactments, and it is a very silly game.
Got you. Duly noted. I will up the game.
Okay, so campaign games. So my experiences with these are you usually have multiple games that are kind of linked, and the way I've done them in the past, besides the Granada campaign, which we can get into that, is they are very historically narrative driven. Usually they are tied into a, well, if one thing happens in this game, then it's going to change the next game slightly. It's hard to do that with historical scenarios though, because you get into this like spreading spider web of different things that can happen, and how many of those different things can you really account for. So I don't know what your experiences have been with that, but that's been kind of mine, where it's like, okay, well, we can't really change the historical narrative, but we can change things about it to get to the end point, and then maybe the end is slightly different if certain things have happened in a certain way. When I did the Granada campaign, though, that was kind of a breath of fresh air, just because it wasn't competitive, or I didn't play it as a competitive campaign. I played the Spanish as sort of a DM, and I could just let my players experience the campaign, and I was able to just kind of facilitate that playing the Spanish. And then when I felt like things were a little bit easier on them, I could really like start playing a little bit better. Or if I felt like that they were getting beat up a little bit, I would just start being a little taking things back. So it gave me a lot of control in that way. So that was really great. When that campaign comes out, I really recommend, if you have the models to play Spanish that way, and you're a experienced Blood and Plunder player, that's a great way of community building, I think, is to allow that to be kind of a cooperative thing for the Buccaneer players.
Yeah, someone has to play the bad guy, as they say.
I enjoy playing Spanish, so it's
kind of like playing a World War II game where nobody plays Germany. It's like you may not respect what they did, but I mean they did. They existed.
I want to say that the Spanish Empire was maybe a little less evil than Nazi Germany, but we can debate that.
I mean, sure. I don't think that was not the angle I was after, but yes, you are 100% correct. I think that's comparing apples to oranges for sure. I mean, they did a
No, and
lot
I
of
like
bad
to
stuff.
I
was
like
just
to
saying.
I like to tell people too in Blood and Plunder when they start asking questions about the game. I was like, this at this point in history, nobody really is good guys. Like
No.
this is a very murky time in history where it's like, yeah, everybody was kind of doing some shady stuff, and not all of it is fantastic. All of it's interesting, but not all of it's fantastic.
I will say that in order to have a successful narrative type campaign, you have to approach it from, like I was saying before, with the whole the trifecta of what it is to be in the hobby. So there's like the gaming aspect of it, there's the hobbying aspect of it, and then I think there's like the lore. So and again, when you're playing historical, it's the case of like actual human history, right? And so I think that the very first thing you have to establish when you're doing a narrative game is you have to get the people that you are playing with. You have to tell them, and you got to sit them down like adults, and you have to say, listen, what we're about to do, there might be unfair games. There might be stuff that you don't necessarily agree with. There might be calls that you think are kind of bad or whatever. But truly, honest to goodness, is what you want. What you want from soup to nuts, right? Is you want a story that is told in an interesting way. Where if you were at a dinner party or whatever, you could say, "Hey, I was hanging out with my buddies and we like essentially wrote this book where, hey, Captain Corsario de Miliciano, malicious man, or like just like cartoonishly evil Spanish man is going into town and he knocked over everybody's trash cans and he kicks over all the sweet rolls and he rubs the dirt in them and he tells the natives that they're stinky and all these other terrible things. And then all of a sudden you have your like hero people who are coming in to try and like right the wrongs or whatever. So it's like obviously
Baron Romando?
Yeah, Baron Romando. He has your family. You got to kill him 4 times to get the treasure map segments for each family member. Oh my
I'm
god,
just
that's a
going to say
great example.
what you're describing is what the Western design thought that they were going to do in the
Correct.
Caribbean. So
I will say the first thing you have to do, unless you really want the scale to be like that, is you have to make it personal. And so this is a weird tangent, but one of my biggest qualms with something like the Star Wars universe, right, is you have this IP that everybody really loves, but when you really look at the movies, there's 3 sets of trilogies. They all kind of roughly tell the same story. They're telling this same basic story. But when you boil it down to the things that people really like about these different IPs, Star Wars being obviously one of the big ones, is when you look at something like Mandalorian, where you're just like, well, maybe not in the later seasons, but the first season especially, is you're in the Star Wars universe, but you're more invested in like what the guy is doing. So if you're going to play like a narrative thing set in the Caribbean, I don't really care what King Charles is doing in his throne room because he's worried about the price of sugar so that his rich noble people don't have to drink their tea without flavor or whatever, right? It's like you have to boil it down to the basic essence of this is a human. We're going to tell a human story because when you talk about it in that way, I think people get more emotionally invested. And ultimately speaking, if you are playing in a narrative campaign and something happens and somebody has a emotional reaction to something that happens, you know that you're doing a good job. You're telling a story that people are resonating with, right? And so in order to do that in an RPG, it's easy, right? Because everybody just like makes a character. But what you can do, especially in the model gaming world, is there are different rule sets out there. One of my favorite ones has always been the chain of command rule set, which is called like Sharps practice, which is you like roll to see who your like sergeants and your corporals are and who your like CO is and blah blah blah. And you don't really worry so much about the grunts, but what happens is that you make these little, just like a little blurb. You're like, yeah, Charles, my captain, he's from Plymouth, right? And he was sent in the the Western design, and he went over there, and he kind of got trapped there because they kind of left him there, and he got a boat, and now he's running around robbing Spanish or whatever. And so if you take something that is such a basic human element where you're just like, this guy's just trying to make a living, right? He's trying to make his way in the galaxy, like a Han Solo type thing. So if you're able to do that, but then maybe intertwine it into a larger narrative, I think that people start having an emotional reaction to it, especially if you start adding side effects or consequences for decisions that are made in the game. Where is the level that you like adhere to that is obviously the gaming group. You kind of make that up as you go. There should kind of be like a rough DM or GM, right? Like, as you were saying, somebody to like play the bad guys or whatever. But there should be somebody to kind of establish like maybe a set rules where it's like, hey, if your guy dies, On a 7, he's like dead. Like he's dead for good. Otherwise, if you roll a 6, he's just captured, and they bring him back to Spain and they teach him about God or whatever the Spanish did, or they brand him for being different. So I think that if you are able to make the decisions on the tabletop have an emotional, visceral reaction, I think you will have a very good narrative campaign. What does that mean? Well, let's just say you have a linked set of games. The first game is, Captain Charles, whatever I said earlier, Charles. Captain Charles sails and he bumps into a Spanish boat and he boards it. Maybe in the game you board it, and then like the guy that's in the GM is like, he has like kind of like a rough outline of maybe what he's supposed to find. They're like, oh yeah, you find some like treasure that might be cursed or whatever, like some ancient voodoo, the kind of type thing, whatever that happens to be. And then what happens is maybe it's not cursed, but maybe the next game you say, all right, well, the survivors of the previous game, they have to go to on a land game, and they're like, oh yeah, they get in negotiations with the natives, and it doesn't go well because they bring some cursed treasure or whatever, blah, blah, blah. And what I think you should do is, like, depending on what happens in the game, even in the most like lackluster numbers way, right? If you just look at it from like a narrative standpoint, like a White Wolf type of RPG setting, you could say, oh, these guys survived. Maybe they did this really cool thing where they killed the whole unit melee. Let's give them +1 melee attack or melee defense or whatever it happens to be, right? And so you have to, in some ways, push an unbalanced nature to the game, which is why I think you need to have people who are invested in it from a story standpoint. And maybe let's just say in that same scenario, the native guy, Captain, Kumqua or whatever, he survives, but he does a lot of damage, and at the end of the game he retreats and he comes back to fight another day or whatever, right? And I think attaching names to your characters and all that, and knowing that there's a consequence that they might die or whatever, I think adds that visceral reaction to it. I think it's like a Necromunda or a Mordheim or even Blood Bowl in some ways. Or Port Royal, actually, is a great example, right? If you want to keep it in Firelock, where you have to name your dudes. I think if you're able to make yourself nervous that you might win the battle but lose the war, I think that you have successfully created a narrative type experience. It doesn't need to involve a map. It doesn't need to involve some by golly complicated system where you have to track, like, oh yeah, there's 200 points on this little piece of shit on a board and you move it and all that stuff happens, right? Like, you can do that kind of stuff, but you got to really have a group of people that really want to do that, and that's quite the time investment. Most people have jobs and families that they got to take care of, blah blah blah. And I think that if you're able to create a story where you could tell somebody, hey, this really cool thing happened in, like, you don't even mention that it's like you played a game. You're just like, oh yeah, I heard have you ever heard the story of Captain Charles? It's not a story that the Jedi tell very often, or whatever you want to do, and you tell the story of like what happened, essentially, right? So that, in my mind, is the basic components of like what a narrative campaign is. And I think the framework that you attach that to is obviously more, I guess you could say, curated to the group of people that you have. So like Joe, like hypothetically saying, if me and Joe were in the same room, we could probably get really nitty gritty into like, hey, yeah, this guy specifically wasn't at this battle because he was on a boat that was, on the shoreline or whatever, a million miles away. He definitely wasn't there. But then there might be other people where you're just like, I just like rolling dice and shooting stuff, and I call my guy Captain Butthead or whatever. And that's like not as much of like that person's probably not going to want to get as much of like curated detail. I might be rambling. Does that all make sense so far?
Yeah, I think it comes down to the group dynamic, and you've got to figure that out, because yeah, you could have me and Joe play a game where we recreate, a mission attack that happened in 1704 that we both really care about and have read in books, and we'd really like to play that on the table, but somebody else coming into it and play it, it's just, they don't care, even though it's a really cool story to me, but they may not care, and they would rather come up with their own stories, and that's perfectly fine too. And that's something that I've tried to get with my group is, and I think my group is, I think I've got a mix of people in my group that most of them don't care about the history, and then I've got a few people that do really care about it. And so it's a struggle with me, because I do really care about it, to try to kind of cater to both sides a lot of times. So yeah, I understand what you're talking about.
So in your example, Dr. D, how are you going to run it as a multiplayer game, like a multiplayer campaign, like 6 people, and you're going to make pairings and match people up, or is it a 1v1, or is it a 1v1 times 3, or how do you spin the narrative and still have it be a group experience that everybody can kind of drop into, hopefully reliably every week, but maybe they have some 3D printing at home and they decide they want to go home and do that and leave their opponent hanging at the game store that day. How do you keep it going?
So I find that the creation of bits. So if anybody, one of my best friends growing up said something absolutely so mind-bogglingly clever, that the success of a movie is determined by the memes that people can make out of it. Right? So like the zeitgeist of remembering a movie is based purely on like the stupid memes that can come out of it. So I find that no matter how big the game is, right? So you could have like a 1v1 or a 1v3 or whatever. A lot of it's going to be collection dependent, which is why I think that the No Peace Beyond the Line campaign is absolutely brilliant. And I think it's a really good abstract, but still concrete way of kind of determining who can bring what. But I think the biggest issue that you bump into with that campaign system is that it requires everybody that's playing in it to have an invested collection, because all of a sudden you're limiting people's boat sizes and other little like details where it's like, okay, maybe I don't have a size 2 boat or whatever. Maybe somebody only bought the frigate, right? Now all of a sudden they can't do that. And I think even in that campaign system, you can't even start with a size 2. I think you have to start with size 1s. Maybe somebody doesn't own 4 Paraguas to play a 200-point sea game, right? And so I think, to answer your question, if you want to have the different like matchups, what I always say is, hey, this board that I created, it's a shoreline or whatever. Let's make a quick based on the things that have happened. So in the campaign game that I was talking about earlier, where the Mission Garrison did their games, we did 2 games in the day. I played him where we both raced on shore to try and grab treasure. He beat me. So the game after that, there was 2 Dutch players at the event. I said, hey, you guys team up, and because they had played against each other. So like the 2 rival Dutch, companies or whatever, like bump into each other. And then all of a sudden they say, so the narrative was, they fought each other. They realized that they have very common interests, and then they decided to go after this island that they heard from the English, who got kicked off, which was me, that there was treasure on the island, and that there was just a bunch of very angry religious natives and poorly equipped soldiers hanging out, right? And so that was the narrative for that game. So then that was a 2v1 where the Mission Garrison person got almost like, so but the way I did it was he got 450, and then the Dutch players got 500. Which was a huge mistake because of the fact that Mission Garrison can create a lot of very big units with that point total. And so that was a learning lesson. So what happens is that if you're a good leader of a community, you take the things that the players say seriously. And sometimes players will have hot takes where you're like, yeah, that's not true. I don't agree with this. And sometimes they don't understand the rules as well as the person that's probably running all this stuff. So it's like if somebody were to explain to Joe, hey, this is how this rule works, but you, as someone who's been closely intertwined with the rules, know that's not true, and they just played it wrong, you have to be able to determine, hey, I still believe in what it is that I created, but you just didn't interact with it in a way that was something that might have made it more successful.
Like 6-point freebooters?
Like 6-point freebooters. Let's just say hypothetically, there was a 6-point English unit that people can use to rile me up really easily and really cause me to sidetrack anything that I'm in, because they should be 5 points, and there should be 2 points to equip them with not sidearm pistols. Anyway, but you have to like be able to, from a narrative standpoint, listen to what somebody says and dissect the good out of it and dissect the things that maybe you don't agree with. Maybe they're not wrong, but maybe you just don't agree with it, right? And so to answer your question, I think it very much depends on the situation of how many people showed up, who do you think is more reliable, who do you think is a side character, who do you think the main characters are, have those people fight, and try and create, and that's the only way I can describe it, bits, right? And so during last year's Summer of Plunder, this is highly inappropriate, so I'm going to use different words, but just imagine that I use different words. Down in the New Bedford area in Massachusetts, which I believe is also another town in England. I don't remember if we were recording that or not, but all the towns are named for things that were in Europe. When when we got there, it was a Raid the Galleon event where there was like 6 people all playing not Spanish, and then there was a Spanish galleon with it was supposed to be the treasure fleet or whatever. Blah, blah. And so the bit I created, because I'm a bit creator, I'm a bit of a smack talker, I don't know if anybody's ever noticed, was I went in through the galley. I went in through the little, canopy, or not canopy, the porch. I went in the back porch. And so the joke I told was, I'm going in through the back while everybody's fighting on top of the deck, which had other bits going on. And I went in there and I stole King Alfonso II's favorite chair that he would sit in while he watched his wife do things that aren't appropriate, right? So now, anytime you ever bump into the people that were at that event, half the joke is, we have that chair. That chair's on my ship, and they're trying to get the chair. That would be like in a hotel room if everybody's kind of getting what I'm getting at here. And so that kind of bit creation, I think, makes that emotional connection to it, right? And even at the most basic component, that doesn't even affect the game. But when you have that idea of like, our captains knew each other and they fought over this stupid thing, now you have like, you might be compelled to do a move that doesn't make sense tactically purely because you think it's funny. Or it's tying into what it is, the story that you're trying to tell, if that makes sense.
Building history within your group is always really great.
Correct.
Yeah.
And I'm sure everybody in this group probably has like, I played this game against this person, and because, this specific Boucanet survived a bunch of bullets that were shot at it, and he was only, the last guy in his unit, and you never got the resolve to like fully run away or blah, blah, blah. He's like, that guy's Carl. Everybody loves Carl. He's great. It's like little stories like that, right?
Riley has some guy like that. He painted golden base because he just refused to die. In a game I played.
The guy, the Sea Dog that's on the thumbnail for who is that? Hornigold's Last Stand, the storm thing that we did with
that's great.
I think Charles Vane? Yeah. Is that same little dude he's painted gold, or he has a gold rim.
So what I'm hearing from you, your kind of idea is the very thing I'm worst at, which is being a game master in an RPG and making stuff up and being, in my charitable way, language here, loosey-goosey, where you're telling a story and you're making stuff happen, but it's not all in a strict rule set, but you are facilitating the story, and it might not all be balanced, and people might not be able to choose how to upgrade and all this campaigny stuff that some people might be expecting, but it makes a story and memorable scenarios. But it also, that sounds like a challenging thing to plan from week to week and have people prep for. How do you imagine that going?
So as I'm what you call a crazy person, right? So every quarter, my current plan, which we've only done it once, right, is you write a packet that's pretty loose, right? So in the very first event, what I wanted to do is I wanted to seed the universe that we're building with the players' characters, and they're all untrained national, the generic commanders, right? So it's like generic Dutch guy. So they're all untrained. They all have the exact same rules except for the Spanish one for some reason, which comes ruthless. And so they all have one command point, and they're all really bad. So after every game, I made a chart that has like upgrades. So they would roll on at the end of the game to do some kind of upgrade on the character, whether it's like increased command range or whatever, blah, blah. So what does that mean for like the question that you're asking? I think that if you create a loose way of tying them into it that doesn't require them to come every week, I think that's a much better way of doing it than being like, we have to have this exact number of people every time people show up. So if you create something, which is in this case is like the city thing that I'm building, which I'm using the Rain. It's called Rain as an REIG, which has like a company building rule set to it. If you make something that is essentially like a part of their army list, whether they show up or not totally super necessary, right? And ultimately, the impetus of it is the narrative that you're creating. You should have like an overarching goal that maybe you're kind of like gently pushing them towards, where it's like maybe there's this greater evil in the background or blah, blah, blah. And then the characters themselves, which would be the players, have to make their own stories in a way that it's maybe a little bit more interpersonal, right? So it's a lot easier to make a story where you're like, all right, Captain Joe did this mission where he raided a mission garrison or whatever, and now the Spanish hate him, but maybe he doesn't show up till the next week or whatever. So maybe he's just recuperating and, biding his time somewhere in the Caribbean Ocean or whatever, or sea. But if you were to say, you did this, and all of a sudden the king of Spain is mad, that all of a sudden has a wider implication for the things that are happening, right? So you have to think, okay, well, you should, essentially what I'm trying to say is you should have like, maybe not a contingency plan, but you should plan knowing that not everybody's going to be able to show up. Pray that they do. In a perfect world, everybody shows up. Maybe you don't do every week. Maybe you do like an overarching every month. Like, hey, everybody plays like maybe like a small Summer of Plunder, right? You're like, oh yeah, everybody's fighting over
once a month.
Yeah, kind of thing, right? And I think that if you have a way, and one of my very favorite things to do as a person who makes events is you create rules for the event that require people to bring lists that they are not comfortable with. And I think that instantly will start to pull people out of that competitive mindset where they're like, okay, I'm not going to Adepticon. I'm going to my game store to play against, a guy that I really like, where we're both going to be inhibited, I guess is a good word to put it, where we both have to bring worse lists because of whatever contingency things. Like you have to bring a bosun or whatever.
Freebooters.
Throws off your math. You have to bring all freebooters, and they're all 7 points, but they're not veteran freebooters for some reason.
Overpowered.
OP. So absolutely OP. But yes. But again, does that answer your question?
It doesn't. It wouldn't help me do it because I lack the spontaneity and imagination. But I don't know. Maybe.
I think what you're describing, you have to be a good GM for that to do what you're saying, which I do that a little bit, but I am sort of like Joe in that sense, is I don't really do that well. So yeah, I think what you're saying is a great idea, but it's like maybe a little bit difficult on execution for everybody.
And which is why I say the beginning, you just have to have the right. You just kind of have to gauge where the party's at, right? If everybody that you have is just like wanting to show up to play a game, well, that's what they're after. But if there's somebody who might be interested in telling more of a story, well, maybe you pull those characters, you pull those people aside and you say, hey, let's play this game where you tell this story about whatever. And I don't think it's a good idea to like force somebody into like the type of game that you want to play. But I will say, if I was in a room and me and my friend were playing a game and then I look over at the table and people are laughing harder because of the stupid bits or blah, 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 you definitely get a bit of a FOMO type reaction to it. Because you're like, oh, well, maybe I do want to make Captain Butthead be, like tied into this whatever stupid thing that they're making. And that, I think that, and I agree with you. I think that the ability to adapt to the environment of what it is that's happening is tough, right? So I think that's why you gave yourself more than a week to plan whatever, right? So as far as Joe goes, Joe has always he's very much stricken me as a more on the like scholarly type logic based, cause and effect.
Looking for euphemisms for boring, but that's okay. Yep.
No, that's not what I said. But yes. No, but yes. But like he has a certain way. Like if I have an assumption that if I were to go to Joe's house and he had a personal library, it's probably not full of like, very flowery super fiction books. I expect it to be just 15 copies of the Silmarillion is honestly what I expect. Of just
kids have asked me to read the Silmarillion to them for bedtime stories, so this strikes true.
How did I know? But you could use that as maybe a strength, right? So like it's easy to look at the things that make us who we are and we could see it as a weakness, but you could also look at it as a strength if you just change your vantage point on it, right? So like in Stoicism they say the obstacle is the way, which is the fuel of your the problems of your life are the fuel for your future growth, right? And if you look at the things that maybe you don't think are very good, you can skew it in a way that maybe you do get more success out of it. So in this case, maybe Joe says, hey, maybe he doesn't do any narrative-y type rules or whatever, but maybe let's just say over the course of a month, everybody plays their games or whatever, and they kind of tell him what happened. Maybe he writes like a little fake newspaper, or maybe he writes like a book maybe he writes like the page of a history book of like, oh, this is the history of this area of this island of whatever kind of thing. And I think
so this is what Jason has done, and I respect him for it because I have trouble with it. For Summer of Plunder every year, or the last couple of years, after the week had resolved and all the attacks, and he just spins a narrative of some sort to make kind of a story version of what happened. But it takes me time.
Which is totally understandable, right? Because I mean, even like I know a little bit about your personal life that more than like other people do, but like you have a family, you have a lot of kids, right? It takes a lot of time to make sure they don't burn the house down, right? So it's like, again, if you can just foster it is even like that, and like people, if, as long as you do something earnestly, I find that most people, even if you do something and there's like a bit of a hiccup, most people who are people you would want around are the ones that are the most understanding, where they're like, yeah, I know Joe's a busy guy, and maybe he didn't finish the newspaper thing on the, right, like in a month or whatever. Maybe he's got to finish it or whatever. And I think people are pretty forgiving in that regard, right? That's the best part of a good community.
Yeah. Actually, I'm more worried about people actually never even looking at it, and all the work goes to naught.
But that's the thing, is like you make it, right? So like even for me with the narrative, the big narrative thing that I'm doing, I'm essentially going to try and write. I'm going to like turn it into like a book in some ways, right? I'm going to like put it in a binder, and I put it on the Discord. I bet if you were to put it on the Discord, somebody's going to read it. Like if you put it on the Firelink Discord, and even people who aren't there, all of a sudden now they're reading it. Like, and again, like I keep using World War II as an example, like where people like that were just living at home, they would watch those like, black and white reels of like, the Dateline, the war, that war kind of thing, they read this thing and they're like, I'm not actually there, but I'm very invested in like what's happening. So maybe, if you write these things and you publish it or whatever, but you put it out there, I bet people would read it. And I bet at least I would be interested in being like, oh, I wonder what happened to Captain Butthead this month or whatever. You have like some kind of like periodical type thing. You know what I mean?
Yeah, so can I run over the different campaigns that are officially in Blood and Plunder right now and my experience with them? I know some of you have probably done some of it, but
I think it's a great idea.
has anyone else played the No Peace Beyond the Line campaign system?
I have not.
I don't think I have.
It's chunky.
It's big. It's cool, but it is pretty demanding in a couple different ways. One, you need a lot of people, and you need them to be regular and have suitable free time to do it every week. And then you need a really good understanding of the rules. A campaign is a great way to pull new people into the system, but this campaign, you have to know all your stuff, and then you need to layer on kind of all these restrictions on top of it. So everybody starts with poorly equipped. Nobody can have cannons, nobody can have ships at the beginning. So all of your stuff is different than what it looks like on your cards and on your book and everything. So you really need to know what's going on, and then limit to yourself, and then have a collection like you mentioned. And that's one of the really difficult things for any campaign you design as a package is, how can I make this accessible to everybody, or not everybody, but to the majority, or be inspiring to people to rise to be able to do it. And then the other thing that happened in that campaign, we were playing about 6 people. We played it pretty far up, a bunch of weeks. Played it 3 times probably, with various variations on it. But one thing that was, there's always ways to say you can fix this, but a runaway leader problem. And this is really a big deal. And everybody thinks about this in campaigns, right? What if somebody gets ahead and they're just unstoppable, and it becomes unfun to play that person because they have either through brilliant decisions or masterful gameplay or playing too many freebooters and everything falls before them, their mighty power. They're always winning. And then with that campaign system, there's always the possibility of death too. Your commander you've been working on for a long time can die. And then you kind of go way back, and then you're less likely to win more games. But it's hard to avoid that because you want the possibility of death. But if death actually happens, it turns out it's no fun. So we had some runaway leader problems. We had some, and in a game this complex and large, 99 factions or whatever, and some factions lend themselves better than others to that system. So that was kind of our experience with that. We kind of did it as written once, quite a ways into it, probably as far or even further than it was meant to go. And then we did a variation which was scaled back some of those restrictions, but focused mostly on the commander development. So you name your guy, he starts with no abilities, he gets to add ability from the list every so many games or whatever. And that was pretty fun and pretty light, and we could anybody could play anybody. But then the game selection mechanic was kind of tricky too. And it's very cool, but again, it takes a fairly developed collection, understanding the game, terrain collection, and then you can come out with a bad pairing. If you're the Austin Privateers and you get stuck with a land game against natives, it's going to be a little rough. Then you have to kind of invest in an opportunity to choose what game you get to play, which is cool. But like you said, Dr. D, you can you have to tell people it's not always going to be fair, and sometimes you got to make the best of it. But if the unfairness means your commander's killed and you have to make a Mr. Butthead the second, it can hurt.
The miraculous, heroic, godly intervention of the GM can always be used as a way to, fairy wand it back into reality.
And Guy Rourke, he's used to be on this podcast or previous version videos and stuff, and work in Blood and Pigment pretty deeply, but he had to step away from the game because he got a new job and move and stuff. He's really good at that. He ran the campaigns. He was really good at balancing things and spinning narratives and stepping in to make things. And he did 2 variations on this campaign that were quite cool and healthy. But yeah, it takes somebody who's pretty skilled in that area, and that can help fix some of those things that can pop up inevitably in a campaign in a game this complicated and large with lots of people of different abilities.
So I would even say, looking at it from like a Garrett's perspective, like, is someone who's maybe not necessarily tied into it as much from a narrative standpoint, what is the most basic you would be willing to do as far as like a narrative?
Most of what my narrative repertoire has been is historical games. That's kind of what I like, and that's what I tend to do. What I really enjoyed about the Granada campaign, and it kind of makes me want to do other things that are similar, is the cooperativeness of the experience, and the fact that the way that I did it did not require everyone to be at each game session for the campaign to work. The only person that really needed to be there was me and one other player, and we could continue the story. That being said, I could see this as a way of maybe hooking in people that don't really play miniatures games, but they play RPGs a little bit more, in a sense that, like what you're saying, what I get from what your spiel is going is you are going heavily into the RPG element of this.
Essentially,
you are pushing, making your own character, you're making your own story. And what I would do if I were to do something like this is I would just want to sit back and put things in sort of a historical context for the players, and have things that might happen that, this is your goal. How are you going to get to that goal? You are a group of buccaneers. You each have maybe 1 or 2 units that are under you. You have come in consort, and we're all going to try to do this. We're going to try to amass this many pieces of 8 while we're out sailing together. How do you want to do that? And just kind of facilitate a story that way. But yeah, I'm not the best DM or GM in the world. I would really put the burden of making stories and things on my players more so, and I'm just going to play my Spanish minis that I like so much. So, if that makes sense.
It does make sense. And I think one of the big advantages of at least this era, and from a historical standpoint, is because of the nature of the rule set, it's pretty close knit, right? So it's like it's very easy to say, oh, the French and the Dutch are fighting each other here, right? So if you wanted to play Spain, I mean, how hard is it to say, oh, there's a Spanish ship that just happened to be sailing by, in the Spanish Main? And I think that makes it a lot easier, at least from maybe like a 40K standpoint, where you have to be like, oh yeah, every single alien and human, all of the different factions are on this exact same planet, all doing, the exact same thing. It's a lot harder to kind of hand wave from a narrative standpoint. So I don't think that, you wanting to play Spanish is like necessarily, difficult. I think it's easy to kind of write in whatever it is that people want to play, at least in my opinion. If that's...
And let me say too, I'm coming at this I think the Granada campaign kind of changed my, the way my brain works with Blood and Plunder campaigns. I think you and Joseph and probably Riley all have played, and what you're doing right now is more of you bring your own list and you play in a campaign, and it's kind of, I'm guessing it's kind of a competitive thing where it's like somebody's going to win at the end. And what I'm envisioning is the group is either going to win at the end or the group loses at the end. It's very cooperative.
So the game master is the facilitator, and everybody plays against him. That's what you
Yes,
did.
I'm not there to really play. I'm just there to facilitate like the story and keep people in the historical context, and just kind of I might say, okay, well this time you've taken this route, and so we're going to roll to see what ship you roll up on. Oh, it's an English Navy ship, but you suck at descrying things, so you think it's a Spanish fishing vessel. Until you roll up on it, and now it's too late. Oh, you're fighting this English Navy list. So there you go. Have fun, stuff like that. But it would be like, because I have that issue with my group. Not everybody can make it every night, every game night that we get together. And so if it's a thing where it's like, okay, well, this person needs to be here, or like the whole thing falls apart, I would rather have it just be like, okay, we're just, as a group, we're all playing this campaign kind of cooperatively, and doesn't really matter who's here. Like, if you don't show up, you're not going to get we're going to have to tell you what happened next time. But, and also you might have some of your guys, get killed while you're not here, but that's on you. You don't have to be here, but I'm going to give your guys to somebody else to play them. But yeah, I don't know if that makes sense or anything, but like I said, I think the Granada campaign has just kind of like rewired the way I think about like linked games and Blood and Plunder, and how they operate, and how I kind of want to experiment with them going into the future.
It should be said, I have not tried the new campaign. I have not had the privilege of trying it myself.
Yeah,
that might be completely different from what I've experienced.
I'll be run over it really quick how it kind of works. It's mostly my project. I designed it, and then Riley has been subject to much playtesting, and my whole group has worked really hard on it. And I played it through probably 3 times, and several people have played through it now. We reworked it to present it as a solo campaign, with the Spanish being AI, basically. But it's more fun if you have a person doing it. But it has to be the right kind of person, because when I originally introduced this to people, it didn't go over well, because the Spanish players were like, what? I'm getting massacred. And if you want to tell a story about a certain person, historical person or group, usually their opponents aren't all the same. Like, you can't have Wiz Rogers and Vane fight each other 10 times. It didn't happen, right? That's not how it works. So one team is going to have all this fun upgrade stuff and have a good time and have the name guy, and the other guy is going to play the faceless red shirts, stormtroopers, whatever you want to call it. And it's not nearly as much fun. And I guess I should go back real quick and say this is how I felt coming out of the Buccaneers Companion, which was the 2020 organized play kit that kind of got a rough launch. If you might have noticed, that year, 2020, is a campaign, 5-6 scenarios following the South Sea Adventure, Bartholomew Sharp, a bunch of guys there. They did a big Buccaneer raid, and 6 scenarios, and if you win it, you get a bonus for the next one. That's kind of how the campaign went. You have a mix of land and sea, and I love that. It was cool, has special characters, but the Spanish player kind of got boned because they got nothing cool. The English got all these new characters and commanders, and people still win tournaments with them today. It's really good. But the Spanish player just got nothing new game material wise, and they just had to facilitate the game. But half the game's Spanish players was really overpowered and just crushed the Buccaneers. But no matter how bad they got crushed, they came back the next one. So we had Zombie Coxon. That was the joke. Coxon was English commander. He died every single scenario, but he come back next one. And that kind of pulls you out of the narrative, right? Unless you have a real imaginative game master. So those 2 experiences shape. And then I designed a St. Augustine campaign kind of with that experience in mind, and design it kind of in that model. A bunch of scenarios, but instead of scenario A influences scenario B, and scenario B influences scenario C, I had it kind of culminate So if you win this scenario, if your cavalry ran out and got this food, then at the last scenario, you're going to be in better shape because you have food. So there's longer reaching effects. Game 1 affects Game 6. So you're basically building your last scenario through the whole campaign, which gets rid of the runaway leader problem, but it might make that last scenario pretty wonky. And that never got published. It's still languishing along with 1,000 other Google documents in the Blood and Pigment hard drive. I lost my narrative. Where am I going here? And then, so this Granada campaign, it's definitely about these guys, these Buccaneers, and the Spanish. You just need to understand you're going to get beat up a lot, but there's still a way you can win. So if you whittle them down enough, you'll win at the end. You're going to lose every scenario, probably.
Except for
You're
one.
always outmatched. Yeah, maybe you won. Yeah. And then it puts some pressure on the English player. Every guy they lose is painful. It hurts. If you lose young Henry Morgan, there will be no old Henry Morgan. But you get to carry those people through. It's less likely you're going to lose your commander you've invested 2 months of love and labor into. But it's still important and emotional connection with these guys. And what you do in this scenario helps the scenario. But then I threw a bunch of events in between each scenario. They move from here to here. What happened? Here's what really happened. Here, roll it on the dice chart, and it will be one variation of good or bad or medium. It might help one side or the other. So there's some random elements of storytelling, and there's some, you did well here, you're going to do better here, or you did well here. The English did really well. Now the Spanish know they're here, so the Spanish get a buff, which is kind of counterintuitive, but it helps balance things and is actually realistic. Yeah, the Granada campaign, 6 scenarios of different sizes. You don't get your guys back. Some of them might heal. There's an ability to, you roll the dice, 8 or 9 or 10, they come back. They're just wounded in there. But other than that, every guy you lose is lost for the campaign. So you have to be careful and not just think, like Riley was saying, what you were saying earlier, I guess Dr. D was saying, win the battle, but with no thought of the future.
Right.
And then at the end, you have to have enough plunder to be respectable, to make your guys happy. And then you see how many guys you've lost. And if you lost too many, you still aren't very happy because too many guys are dead. Unlike Sid Meier's Pirates, where it's best to kill all your crew right before you split the plunder.
Yeah, that's more money for you. That's how that works. That's economic.
Right.
So those are my big experience with campaigns and different weaknesses and strengths I've seen in it. And then I have this whole other campaign that is Pirates Renown. I don't know if they'll ever see the light of day. Probably not. I think I need to simplify. But it's start as a pirate in a longboat with 8 guys. Go attack a fishing ship. You get a little bit of money. You roll to see if you can get some of those guys on that ship to join your crew. So you grow your crew, and there's all these things. If you did this, if your commander killed somebody, he might get the Ruthless ability. If this unit killed more than 5 guys, it'll get veterancy status. There's all these ways to upgrade, but it becomes cumbersome. And you have to have an opponent that's invested. So I made this whole system of like, okay, you're the Dutch antagonist. You can play all these Dutch factions. You can play Dutch merchants. You can play Dutch trading company. You can play Dutch army. And here's all the ways you can upgrade your Dutch force through the whole thing. Even though you can play lots of different factions and you aren't going to win very much, but you can kind of upgrade your whole system, but you don't have a central character like the pirate player does. But it's never been tested, but it was pretty fun to make. But I think that's what most people want. They want a pirate. They can watch their crew grow and do crazy things. But 2 people can't do that at the same time. A lot of Blood and Plunder games, one person's wiped off the board or maybe both people are pretty much wiped off the board, and it's hard to continue a campaign after that. So to do a really strong narrative campaign in a gamey game system that's not constantly adjusted by a game master kind of balancing things, it's almost a one-sided affair as far as my creativity has gone so far. So I think that's kind of where this Granada campaign comes in. You can play it against the AI system, or you can have a patient and great guy like Garrett run the games, and I think it's a really good way to get new gamers into it. They get used to freebooters costing 6. They're in every scenario, as they should be, and you can kind of pull them along. They get to play the same force multiple times. They have to make some choices. They're kind of long-term choices. You can kind of coach them, help them learn this one faction several times in a row. They might get some curveballs thrown at them. So I think it could be, but there's nothing like super weird. They don't have to put any limits on their forces. They don't have to choose upgrades all the time that they don't know what they mean. So it might be a really good way to pull a veteran to help a newer gamer play a series of games that's fun for them, if the veteran is willing to do that. That was a monologue, sorry.
No, but it makes perfect sense. It kind of, capstones what I'm getting at is like you do need the right people to do it. And I think if people go into it wanting to get to the same goal, right? I mean, that obviously makes it a lot better. And I think that something to keep in mind is people enjoy, I wouldn't necessarily call it like a deadline, but maybe like an end point. So maybe you do have these linked games and somebody is like, oh yeah, I got to play the faceless protagonist, Stormtrooper Vol. Be like, okay, we'll play 3 games or we tell this story, blah, 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 what happens. And then you play another, maybe you switch roles, right? And maybe the other person plays like the Spanish, I don't know, counterattack or whatever. And I think that if people know that they're not going to always be the faceless peon, I think it helps. At least I think so.
Yeah.
Yep.
Nobody likes to be a faceless idiot forever.
Right. But yeah, I mean, ultimately, if you boil down this topic, it's hard in a lot of ways, because a lot of your guys' episodes are like, hey, yeah, we're talking about this faction, and these are these set things that are in this faction. The one difficult thing to extrapolate from this topic is, it's very open to an interpretation, I guess, but, everybody has a different idea of what it is that they like, which was kind of why I was asking, like, Garrett, hey, what is your idea of a narrative? Because his is going to be completely different than maybe mine or yours, Joe. Like, yours would be more like a history book. Garrett's would be more of like from a gamer standpoint of, hey, this is what I want to kind of see happen roughly, and then people kind of roll dice and play games. And again, as I said before, it's that like 3-legged stool, right? Where there's the lore, you're the lore guy, Garrett's more the game guy. I would approach it from like maybe an artistic standpoint of being like, let's write a book. You know what I mean? And so I think that ultimately it comes down to the person that's running it. And as long as you're open and to changing it to the needs of the players, I think they're much more willing to help you achieve that goal, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think all this boils down to you need somebody that's a good GM to make it satisfying regardless.
And a good GM can look a lot different ways depending on their strengths, and they got to play to that and be aware of their players' personalities and what they're looking for out of a game to make it all work.
Right. So ultimately, I think that kind of sums up what we're trying to talk about today.
But I like your, and you can do something simpler, like you doing that. How many games are you going to do in your Spanish Princess series here?
So I'm going to do 3, right? So, and then based on how that ends, those events could eventually lead into like whatever the next thing happens to be, right? So it's a little bit like of a look under the hood. The next game is going to be Port Royal, where the princess essentially, the daughter is going to be like essentially a plunder token, and whoever has control over it over the end of the game has her. And then I'll take the feedback of the people that watch it, either from YouTube or even the people in the Discord, and they're like, oh yeah, I think it'd be really cool if maybe this happened, and then the Dutch commander comes for revenge or whatever, and then you play a C game, and whoever wins that gets the princess. And then maybe like the next round, and I think 3 is a good number, right? The rule of 3 exists for a reason.
Really good.
Yeah.
And so you tell a different story where it's like, okay, well maybe the princess, based on the results of whatever games you play, becomes a buccaneer herself, and you have a little bit of like a Pirates of the Caribbean situation with Elizabeth, where she kind of joins into that idea. Or maybe if the more cruel captain has her, she's like, okay, I don't want anything to do with this, and then it's like a rescue mission from like the Spanish standpoint. And I just, like I said, I just kind of like to go. I have the strength of adaptability. That's always been like something I've been great at. Where if somebody's like, yeah, this would be a cool story, I'd be like, well, let me create that.
So, question for you: are you doing like? How many people do you have playing in your group?
So my group is pretty small. I wouldn't necessarily call it huge. We got a couple pretty good dedicated players. Shout out to them if they're listening to this. I would say at my events, all the tournaments and events I have run, I usually roam around 6. But
Okay.
as far as like a weekly group goes, you would have to ask for a game. Like if I were to just go there with a boat and guys, there would be nobody there.
Okay.
Trying to fix that, obviously, and Summer Plunder might be a bit of an exception. Obviously, I'm sure that's the case for a lot of people, but yeah, that's why I plan quarterly, because I feel like as long as it's a weekend, everybody can justify going to play like once every 3 months, right?
Yeah.
And that's why,
Yeah.
like I think planning a narrative thing on a weekly basis would be really tough, especially with any kind of depth, which is and obviously you bump into like the Necromunda Mordheim problem of a lot of times campaigns kind of peter out just because people get distracted by other stuff. I don't know if you guys know this or not, but life is complicated.
Yeah, that was I guess what I'm getting at is, are you doing like a single table for this game, or is this going to be like multiple different games going on?
It'll depend on the event, but my current thought is I'm going to show up before everybody else. I will probably set up roughly, depending on how many people I think are going to come, I'll set up like 2 or 3 different tables, and each of the tables is, I guess you could say, maybe like a particular like scenario, or even just, this board is for land games. And I say to everybody that shows up, you can play whatever point total you want. You can play whatever force you want within kind of maybe like a small set of parameters. Here is the idea that we're trying to push. Let's just say this event, one of the events that's coming up is I'm a bit of a rules writer, but I'm a bit of a rules writer myself, Spider-Man. And if the event in particular is like, oh, magic is waking up, I'll say, oh, there's a thing on all the boards where if you touch it, your guys get magic bullets or like whatever, right? And you write down like a little note card. It's not so complicated that they need to track it forever, but it's just enough to kind of add a little flavorful zest to the game. And then I write down whatever particular parameters I was looking for. Like, oh yeah, you lost this many guys, and this many guys survived. And so for me, I'm actually going to kind of loosely track the population of each of the characters, like cities. So I will say, well, if you lose enough people, eventually nobody's in your town, and the town just essentially becomes like a ghost town, right? And all of a sudden, then it's like, okay, well, now maybe you work for one of the other players or whatever. You kind of play it by ear. And I have always been of the very strong-willed opinion, and I'm lucky in this regard because I don't really feel guilty about it, where if I play something and somebody doesn't like the result of it, you work with them. But if ultimately they're just untenable, it's probably not somebody I want in my game group anyway. Just gonna be flat out on that. And so if you want to, you got to kind of like curate your group. And that's why I'm saying it's like, if people only want to play games or whatever, they just want to roll dice. There's nothing wrong with that. But maybe they're not going to get what they want out of what we're doing with the narrative thing.
Yeah.
And I think you just need a couple of very dedicated players to make magic happen.
Yeah.
You really only need like one other person who likes history as much as you do to create something really cool, in my opinion. But
right.
And it's open to interpretation per person.
Yeah, every game group is very different. If you're getting new players all the time and growing, you have to run your game group a lot different. If you have a core group of 3 or 4 guys every week, that's a lot different. And you kind of have to pivot to kind of group you have and what they want to do. But yeah, for a while we were getting new people in every time, and then like, I haven't played a real game, competitive game, for months, and I need it. But
yeah. Right. And and for you, maybe the narrative is I bring my best guys, you bring your best guys.
But sometimes our group has been going for a good 6 years or so. Sometimes it's been same 3 guys, 4 guys, nobody else for months. And that's really cool in a different way too, because you get to pull out your best stuff and try competitive lists, and you're going to get a good solid game, but with that same face across the table, which is hopefully good.
And again, it's catered to your needs. And so, and again, I think if the bigger your group is, the more likely you're going to fish out somebody who wants to play the same way as you, right? That's one of the advantages of being a community leader. Is you get to be the one writing the rules.
But usually you got to do the demos for the new players too, so.
Yeah. And again, that's kind of the expectation of what you do when you're a quartermaster, right? And not every quartermaster. And then again, that's why I was saying, like, maybe the quartermaster in particular, your strength isn't writing a story. Maybe you're just like a really good demo giver, right? And maybe you find somebody who really wants to write those kinds of stories. So you're like, hey, can you do this campaign thing? It'd be really cool if you did this, or blah blah blah. You just use people's strength. That's the power of humans, right? Because we're all kind of good at different things.
Yes, let everybody showcase their strengths. That's great. Riley, what do you think? You didn't do some of the campaigns that our group did in years gone by. What sounds fun to try or do from all that stuff we talked about?
I don't know. We did the Granada campaign. I don't know, and I was still a fairly new player when we started doing that. So that was a lot of fun, kind of learning. I mean, I wasn't learning base mechanics, but figuring out how to combo things and like, oh, okay, yeah, I need to use command points for this, like learning that sort of stuff. It was fun to use that in a campaign. I do think that was very unfair for Don. He definitely got the short end of the stick when it came to playing the Spanish week after week after week. But I mean, he did a good job, and he said that he was trying to relearn the basics as well. So I think that might be a good thing with campaigns as well too, is using that to get your newer crowd in on a consistent basis and kind of use those, what was that, power levels, I guess, like as you ramp up in your campaign. Also learning the mechanics of the game is a good way of doing that.
Yeah, we should design a campaign that teaches you a new concept every time.
Yeah, or
With
even
culminating in the final, most difficult scenario where you learn about dedicated actions.
yeah,
Where you learn about stone fortifications.
dedicated climb actions. Yeah. No, I think that we've definitely had a good talk about I don't know, like the DM mindset is really good for campaigns, and it's definitely something that is, I don't know, it's inherent in a person. You can't really learn how to be on the spot like that. Like, we're talking about how Joseph is very detail oriented and needs, like having a good plan is very useful, but you also need to be able to think on your feet, come up with, okay, yeah, this isn't a rule in the game, but for this campaign we're going to make, mortars are going to be a thing, and we're going to do them this way because so and so needs a little bit of an edge to keep them in the, in the game or something. Having a good balance of those two things is very important, I think.
I can come up with rules on the spot, but I cannot run a story in Magical Kitty RPG for my 6-year-olds to save my life.
Yeah.
But
That's why you need somebody like me, Joe. Me and you would be
That's right.
unstoppable.
Henry Morgan and the Freebooters.
And the 5-point freebooter. Yep.
OP. It'd be unstoppable.
It probably would be, in actuality.
Well, you take stuff away. You don't just make them 5. You just get rid of marksman. That's another. We're gonna go. We're about to go into another 2-hour tirade. I guarantee you.
Yeah. We can't debate that.
No, it's not my.
I gotta go to sleep at some
acting
point.
like I can fix it. I can't just do it. Okay.
All right, you guys hear it here first. If Joe says he can't fix it, that means he hates you, and you should just go to bed with no dinner.
I mean, that's how I read that.
All right, wrap it up, Joe or Garrett or whoever.
Garrett's in charge here. I'm painting.
Okay, yeah, that's right. You were. Is that why you did that? Just to be able to wash your hands of any of this? Okay, so events coming up. Historicon, July 15th through the 19th in Lancaster, Pennsylvania. I'm sure some of the guys in the Northeast are going to be doing something for that, or in the Mid-Atlantic area.
I got something to throw in. I'm doing a tournament, local tournament here, July 18th, Saturday, part of Summer Plunder, I guess, sort of, just excuse to do it. But we'll be doing a 200-point land tournament in Northwest here in my hometown, Oregon City, if anybody is interested. I've got a few people committed already, but should be pretty low-key, but fun time. Similar to how we did at Adepticon, but probably less people.
Yeah, we got Gen Con, July 30th through August 2nd, Indianapolis, Indiana. I will not be at Gen Con this year because taking a break, had just had a kid, going to be just about a year old by then, won't be there, but I have heard that the people that Mike has running the booth at Gen Con this year are going to be running events, so there will be Blood and Plunder stuff at Gen Con this year.
Great.
We have the Nova Open coming up September 1st through the 6th. That is going to be a tournament, I believe. I want to say Curtis was doing some stuff for that as well, but check out the announcements for that. I'm sure you'll find some Blood and Plunder stuff for that.
I know they're doing the Vane versus Woods Rogers scenario, which is actually in the Summer of Plunder book this year, but he's doing that scenario. Should be fun with a fire ship.
Yeah, that's a good one. We also have Adepticon next year, Milwaukee. I'm going to be there if possible.
I'll be there.
Yep.
I'm going to be there this year. Woo! Or next year, whatever.
Change the date.
Next year.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I will be there if I'm
Did you have dates for events you were running this year, Dr. D?
Well, July 5th, I don't think anyone's going to come to that if you're not from around here. We're doing the Great Pirate Shoot-Off.
Hey.
Every single person will play pirates, and every single person has to declare which captain they're bringing, and every captain can only be brought once. We will determine who is the true king of the pirates. 250C tournament in Marlborough, Massachusetts, which is near me. And then after that, I mean, the narrative events and stuff will happen. So I'll put those in the Discord as they come up. I haven't set precise dates for those, but I suspect July or August, I'll probably do the second event, which will be, my idea is going to be like a cops and robbers type thing where people will play. They have to, they'll talk about it later. Yeah, but there's stuff going on in Massachusetts. If you're in the tri-state or New England area, I'm running events. Just reach out to me. I'll get you connected. I made a separate Discord for the area.
Okay. And for more Blood and Plunder content, you can go to bloodandpigment.com and check out all this material we have over there. We have articles on ships, nations, factions, terrain, painting guides, battle reports, anything you can think of, really. So go check it out.
Don't forget Arachne. Check out Arachne.
What was that? I hear something.
I was going to say, Dr. D here, definitely go check out Arachne. The Raise the Black episodes are all Blood and Plunder themed. We talked to a lot of the Firelock people. Super interesting and yada yada. But if you're even remotely curious what's going on behind the scenes, go check out Arachne. The gaming channel, I think, is the technical name of the podcast.
You got several different kind of podcast streams on there, but you got Dan on there 3 times. You got me with once. You got Emily. You got Daniel. You got
Mike.
Mike. Yeah, I really appreciated all the work you've done up there. And you had all the Summer of Plunder commanders on, almost all of them last year. That was really cool too. Yeah.
Not the most tenured Spanish commander, but that's fine.
Well, I will say there was definitely a couple. I reached out to, I think it was the Spanish second in command, and then he never reached back out. He said, "Oh yeah, let me reach back out in like a week," and I don't think they ever did. So I did reach out to Spain. They just never got back to me. And then by the time I thought about it, it was like a couple months after the event. I was like, it's fine. Just leave it at that.
Yeah, you just didn't reach out to the right people.
Okay. Well, I did. Listen, I'd only been playing the game for like 3 months by that point. It's a different ball game now.
I'm just
the official papers got
I know
you are, by some Dutch privateer.
So I mean, I know one of the people playing Dutch. His name's Nigel, and he's got lots of opinions.
Yes, he does.
And you can check out our YouTube channel if you want, but there's not much on it right now because I haven't had enough time to make videos, but we're trying to fix that. I got several in the can that need to be worked on. All right, Riley has to do the Dan thing because Dan's not here.
I thought it would be cool to have Dr. D do it.
Yeah, I saw somebody do it. All right, so let me try and do my best Dan impression.
You've had him on 3 times. You should be able to do
I have, that's true. Yeah, I know his voice. I got the mimicry like perfect just from listening to him. I'm like Taskmaster. All right, here we go. And as always, keep your dice ready and your wind at your backyard.
It was a little fast, but it's good.
A little fast.
All right.
Not bad for a first attempt.